Are you feeling over the hill? Do you think that you're using outdated methods to learn French, the kind that gave us this, and this, and this also? Oh, and how about this? And oh yes, let's not forget this. Essentially, all the things that human thinking made possible by laying one's thoughts on paper in writing. But could it be that we're past this now? Could it be that AI will revolutionize learning? If you're a learner of a certain age, this video might interest you. How outdated is your little pen and paper? In this video I'll share with you how I would approach being tasked with building an AI device to teach a language with an unlimited budget and a team of AI builders to make possible anything I wanted. Let's pretend a traditional teacher like myself was designing such a device. First, if it was a language I knew as a native and taught, I would have no idea where to start. If it was a language I had no notion of, such as Arabic, for example, I don't speak a word of Arabic, I would be full of ideas and enthusiasm. I would absolutely know where to start and what to tell those Arabic translators to tell the AI team. It would almost seem simplistic. As I said, if it was a language I knew and taught, I would be utterly lost. I find that interesting, but why is that? When you teach a language for a number of years, you develop an understanding of complexity, not only about the language itself, but all the variables involved. These same variables I have no idea of in Arabic, nor do I particularly worry about them. But if it was a language I knew, my first question about this AI device would be, what would you like this AI device to do exactly? At the end of the day, the task of learning a language is to engage the human mind for a result that will be acquired through repetition. In this, it doesn't much matter if the device is called AI or something else. Whether it's a textbook from 1940 or a smartphone, the journey will be pretty much the same. It also just so happens that there's one thing human beings dislike. Above all other things, it's effort. It's the natural way our brain is wired. Unless you rewire your brain to like effort, some people do that, but usually the modus operandi is quite basic. Pleasure zone versus perceived displeasure zone, where we choose the easiest route usually. Added to this, there are some societal factors and cultural factors. Some say that people today are getting weaker. There's less of a natural need to go beyond the first obstacle or bump in the road. You don't often have to break through the pain threshold to get to the other side. It's a comfortable world we live in, although we like to moan a lot. But because language learning requires commitment, endurance and discipline, the AI device, would also have to provide a type of learning that requires none of the three. You'd have to be able to flake, give up, and not commit, but still learn, thanks to AI. Or it would somehow be so well designed that we would not even think of adopting these behaviors. Endurance, commitment, and discipline would come naturally to the learner. My guess would be that to negate these natural human traits, the promise of success delivered by the artificial intelligence device would have to be so high that it would generate degrees of enthusiasm never seen before in the history of learning. It would almost have to be along the lines of, listen, do this for 4 months, whatever it is, whatever AI is going to do, and you'll know a new language at a crazily high level. That almost has to be the promise. And this promise might keep a person engaged for 4 months. Another alternative for this device would be to seek to build human engagement through entertainment or some other psychological hack. That's a different approach. So the AI learning device would have to be so varied that it would bring the person back for more all the time. Well, the problem with this is that our storytelling abilities are limited. And even if they were infinite, the quality of these stories or learning activities would have to be incrementally better each time, which poses the problem of how we measure this during the construction of this device. Our sense of marvel isn't infinite. the cup is easily full. The next question I would ask is, who are we building this for? Will this AI device make language more accessible to the average non-language liker? Or will it rather speak to the passionate language learner? In one case, we're promising to turn disinterest into interest, and in the other, we're providing a tool for learning that somehow improves the learning experience through AI. Improving the learning experience through AI. So this would be for people who already like learning. It would somehow make their journey easier. This question sort of answers itself. Since a disinterested person usually has no use for languages, it usually goes hand in hand. For example, if they made an AI device for learning geography, I highly doubt I'd become very interested in it suddenly. I have little use for learning the names of rivers or mountains. AI isn't going to change that. Now the problem is, if you do have an interest in language learning, you're likely already engaged in language learning. You have your methods and you probably don't require a device whose actual purpose, by the way, would still have to be determined. Also, we would have to define what interest means. It ranges from mildly interested, in the case of travellers who wouldn't mind to use a bit of Italian on their next trip to Italy, and it ranges all the way to passionate learners. The very notion of being interested needs to be defined. We're confronted to a problem of definition, which we will also encounter, by the way, in the terms language and learning, which we'll talk about later in the video. In any case, being interested in something is not a minor consideration at all. Interested, to me, means blocking 2 or 3 times a week to get to a meaningfully superior level in language. We've already seen that humans don't usually like to do that unless the activity is easy or pleasant. It's easier to block 2 or 3 times a week to watch television. That is, unless your AI device is so amazing that it just takes 1 use a week for it to produce fantastic results. You don't need to be particularly interested, you don't need to be committed, once a week is enough, and the results are 100% sure to manifest quickly. Which is another common trait in students: engagement. Getting to the next level in a language takes commitment and requires to stay engaged. It's a very hard thing to accomplish. Even if the teaching works very well, we're dealing with human emotions and subconscious decisions. A person might skip a session because they were in the mood to do something else. Priorities also play a role in the schedule of a learner. It takes a very disciplined person to give the same priority to a learning session 2 or 3 times a week and not replace it with something else at the drop of a hat. As we can already see, we have a number of structural problems at the stage of conception of this device. We want to build an AI device for language learning, but we're not sure of several things, nor how to make it happen. And before we go too far, let's have a quick rundown of all the things we've mentioned so far before the device was even built, really at the stage of conception. What do we want it to accomplish exactly? How will it engage the human mind? How does it propose a solution to an activity that necessitates repetition and at the same time not make it tiring or boring? How does it produce a solution to a natural human dislike for effort? Does it make it not necessary to have endurance, commitment and discipline? Is it possible to learn without any of these traits? Is the promise of success of this device so high that humans would naturally use it without ever thinking of giving up and without perceiving the learning as an effort? If this isn't possible, how do you keep humans entertained in an incremental way, and how do you measure this? Is this device built for a person who has no use or interest in languages? Is it so good that it can make anyone a learner of a language? Or is it for people who are interested in it anyway? If so, what is the factor that AI brings, and which variable is AI improving on exactly? We'd have to establish what degree of interest a learner has in a language. Curious, mild, intense interest. Can this device be so good that it works well despite a human tendency to prioritize different activities instead of learning? Could you use it once a week and would it still work? Or does it still require discipline? These are just some of the problems you'd have to look at before even designing the thing. And as I said at the very beginning, these questions are a lot easier to answer if it's for a language we know very little about. Artificial intelligence builders are rarely experienced language teachers. The two might meet and collaborate, but the issue would be for the teacher to explain all the traits of human psychology they've experienced during their career and that the AI builder will somehow have to solve. You'd have to know so much about teaching and language. In a sense, you'd already be the best in the world. If you're capable of building that device, you're already the best in the world. So you probably wouldn't build this device, would you? It's like a chicken and egg situation. You'd have to be able to attain that degree of performance in real life before you made it into a machine, by which time you'd be charging $1,000 an hour anyway because you figured it all out. You're that good. And somehow be able to communicate this rare skill and your knowledge, this skill you have, your knowledge, to an AI builder, a team of AI builders, and fit it into whatever device it is under a non-human form. So what I'm saying is that it's usually the AI builder wanting to make money who looks at fields of application for their technology. In my sense, it wouldn't stem from the expert teacher who's so good they can actually bypass all the learning limitations I mentioned earlier. The next thing we'd have to do is define learning and language. It seems easy, but it's not. If you're a seasoned teacher who knows their stuff and you have a linguistic frame of mind, you'll know that it's complex. You can actually have the best understanding of a language and even the best way to teach it in the world, and it might still not work. It's actually possible. You can be the best. It might still not work. As I said, when you don't know the language you're designing it for, and you don't know it as a professional, it's easy to design an app that tells you the word for orange, cow, I'm eating, and so forth. But when you measure the depth of the topic, you'll find it hard to fit it into a device. You'll find it hard to conceptualize it. Multiple questions would come to you about the best way to present the information and according to which subjective priorities. You wouldn't know by which end to start because you know there's no real answer. If we consider the meaning of learning, we must ask ourselves what exactly we are learning. Is this device designed to improve vocabulary? Or is the device designed to recognize irony in someone's voice? What are we exactly learning? It's not so simple. Within learning, there's a short-term and long-term memory of the student, but also the speed at which you can turn your knowledge into an active skill. To speak factually, the AI device might teach you reported speech, but does it also train you to use this skill at the speed of conversation? Does it contextualize this skill for the learner and tell the learner where it sits within a realistic use of French? How prevalent is the new skill I'm learning, a student might want to know. Also, is it a device that aims to accomplish a state of having learned French? Or is it a device that's used as a learning support for a main source of learning? Is it a tool whose purpose it is to bring the whole language with no other resources needed? Is it the thing that does everything? When it comes to the definition of language itself, we can start with basic considerations, such as, well, does it cover writing, speaking, hearing, and reading? But then we can divide this into subcategories. Does it cover the writing and reading that's needed to properly send in a letter of resignation, or to read a novel from 2 centuries ago? In the case of no, we'd have to define the limits of the language that this AI device is capable of covering. For this, you'd have to conduct a meaningful study of the frequency of language patterns according to social situations. Now, obviously, there are words we'll need whatever the situation in any language, but these have to be defined all the same. How do you choose what you leave out? It may seem simplistic, but even college professors whose job it is to work with languages, study linguistics, encounter surprises. There's always something in a language you've never heard of before, and that can be crucial in a given situation. The format of the device would have to be discussed also. If you're a teacher, you'll know that private students bring their emotions into a class. Sometimes they're preoccupied, less energetic, highly energetic, heartbroken, grieving, recovering from an illness, stressed out. Will this AI device be able to adapt to these learning situations? And most importantly, will humans have an interest in a device that pretends to understand human emotions? We also have to speak about age group and target user. Is this AI device for a younger learner, an older learner, a more complex user? Is it for people who have an academic background, or does it adapt to the complexity of one's interest and speech patterns? And as a last point, if we consider that a language is like a road that we move forward on, can this AI device make the road shorter in the style of a folded up map? Can it accelerate learning in any way? Again, how would we establish that it can absolutely do this at the stage of conception as we build this device? And why hasn't anyone already done so in reality? We also have to consider the probability that a road to a language is in a sense predetermined in terms of the possibilities of intake by the student, the learner, and their processing. Is there a maximum speed that the average person can cope with, even if they were at peak performance and with a willing frame of mind? What are exactly the aspects of learning we would want this AI device to accelerate? It's not that easy to say, let's go faster. If you compare learning to a road, yeah, well, which aspects? Can you just fold the road like a concertina and make it quicker? But how do you do that? How do you know it's going to work? Is there not a predetermined speed at which a person can learn? How do we know that we can accelerate anything? And how can we be sure it works? To conclude with this video, I hope to have shared in a clear way that the obstacles a traditional teacher like myself faces would be the same for an AI device. As soon as we aim to get a result out of a human being, many obstacles appear. The AI device that surpasses a human brain would have to be bloody brilliant. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Chris. I'm a real teacher in real reality. I really do teach French, and you can really find me. Thank you very much for watching.